So basically, today's goal is to try and help you, demystify or uncover the secrets of the practice of tagging and of naming convention and how you can actually apply in your practice. So basically, from people that we see that have problems with tagging, they basically start here, that they are managing cloud costs without any cost allocation in place. They have names here and there that doesn't make any sense for their projects, for their resources, for their networks, for anything, and they don't know like where are things made or how they can report them properly or how they can do that. And basically our goal is to make you be here. So basically being able to understand everything, being able to have a proper reporting, a proper naming convention, and a proper tagging that helps you, allocate the resources on your cloud bill and in your cloud environment. So for getting there, who is going to help you? So it's going to be doing the talking, basically me, which is Victor Garcia. I'm the founder of FinOps Weekly, the newsletter plus website, and I'm talking every day about FinOps. And of course, we have Alfonso today that's going to be in the core value. He's the author of The Efficient Cloud FinOps, one book that I recommend everyone to read, apart from when you end up from this webinar and later if you haven't. I would definitely encourage you to read. So a pleasure to have him on the talking, and I will introduce him later on when he starts dropping the amazing content that he has prepared for today. And I think we are now on the top of the hour, so we'll start now with the content. I see more people joining, so you have come to the right point with the timing, to be honest. And today we are going to start with talking about stories and how naming conventions and tagging can help you drive value into your company. So this is an example that we have seen from past experience, that there was a large company where there were tagging policies, there were no naming convention at all, there were nothing put in place to control and to allocate the resources, and basically there was chaos over there. So nothing was standardized, and I think this is something that happens in a lot of companies. So you'd see, okay, we will have to do a super complicated policy, or we have to buy a new tool, or we have to, do something crazy to, handle the resources from an enterprise of a huge size. So, but what really happened was that they actually made a name generator to actually have a consistent resources naming convention. So they were able to define or identify the resources based on the names that they were provided using this name generator. This name generator was basically enforced at some point. So basically they have a naming convention that was totally enforced with some tips and tricks that we'll show to you during the webinar. And this way, with just a simple naming convention and a name generator, something that you can build or that is easily something that you can build from your knowledge, they'll basically be able to report their cost in a company that was super high on resources and super high on employees. So they were super able to do this reporting and do a proper cost allocation just with the naming generator. So this means that you don't have to actually have super complex projects or super complex tagging policies. You just have to have something that is in place that you need to test and you need to enforce for everyone to follow. And to continue, sorry, just so you know that what other people think about, tagging and naming conventions is that, your cloud provider has to be the source of truth of everything. So everything needs to have been controlled either there or in your infrastructure as code if you're using multi-cloud, but everything has to be controlled in those sites. And also that tagging is important. If you don't have mechanisms in place, like for example, naming conventions or folders or project organizations, tagging is a crucial step. Even though if you have good tagging, good naming convention and good folder structures and good organizations, tagging could be really helpful for identifying specific resources, sharing permissions about the specific environments and across multiple line of businesses. It can be really helpful to granular access control, granular reporting, granular identification. So it's something that you should be able to control, and it's key to the cost allocation. So as mentioned before, tagging and naming conventions are key to cloud cost allocation and to governance. And this is something that is perfect for me to introduce Alfonso. So Alfonso is going to be talking about why they are key. So welcome, Alfonso.
Thank you, Victor. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's so nice to be here with you. Okay, I'm going to cover a few topics about tagging and naming convention today. My idea is to do an overview, explain why they are important, what are the key considerations you need to keep in mind when you are designing a naming convention, where you are defining a name and tagging strategy. Let's begin from the beginning. Okay, what do tagging and naming conventions provide for us? Okay, let's forget about FinOps, about cost optimization. I guess most of us are here because of FinOps, but let's go back to the beginning. Tagging and naming policies and naming conventions, what they do is essentially to give us information on a resource, okay? So imagine an example. I have a EC2 instance or a Azure virtual machine with the name test123. What information can I infer from that? Nothing at all. So imagine that I have a state-of-the-art multi-cloud operations, security operations SOC in place, and there is one alert saying that my virtual machine test123 has a high security risk and there is a threat there and I need to solve it. What information does it provide to me? Nothing at all. But on the other hand, if I have in my naming convention, for example, something like AZ as for Azure, then I have the environment, for example, dev, then I have web app, for example, in the name, then I can see at least that is a web app hosted in Azure in the dev environment. So it's a lot of information, and the same applies for tagging. What I'm doing is adding information that anyone can read. And in the case of tagging, it's even more because it's metadata that is attached to the resources. So you can already imagine the value. For me, establishing a naming convention and a proper tagging policies are two of the first steps you need to take for cloud governance. Essential. Why? Because they save time. They save time of our cloud resources, which usually are scarce. For example, if I am a cloud engineer and I'm deploying a new project, every time I create a server or an application, a Lambda function or whatever, I need to think, what name should I give it? For example, should I give it a name, I don't know, function hyphen whatever? Should I put the environment there? I don't need to think. What I need to do is to have something to help me and avoid. I don't need to think, because if I need to think for a name one time, and Victor, who is working with me, he also is thinking on a different name, surely we won't be consistent. So this is also what's essential, to have a consistent policy on what our name should be, on what our tagging should be, okay? We don't need to think. That's kind of the idea. We need to simplify the inventory of resources. We simplify resource management in general. Okay, that's kind of the idea for me. And it's even before FinOps. It's the cornerstone of everything we will do in cloud governance. Okay. So yeah, let's go ahead, Victor. Okay, this point. Okay, what we have described, the tags are information we add to resources, the metadata we add to resources, such as, I don't know, if this application belongs to development environment, if this is the project 1 to 3, and this is the application, whatever application I have in my organization. So it helps me categorize, filter, and analyze. our cloud resources in general. Okay, but how can it help me in FinOps? What most of us are here for. Okay, having a tagging strategy, of course, unlocks one of the key processes for me in FinOps, which is cost allocation. I need to be able to allocate how much a project is spending, how much an application is spending, how much I am spending in development environments. Why? Because I need to be able to assess what's generating waste, where my costs are placed. Let's go from the beginning. Usually cloud providers, okay, they give us tools such as cost management in Azure, the billing reports in Google, and so on and so forth. With these tools, without tagging, we can filter using, I don't know, service type, virtual machines, S3 buckets, GCP buckets. I can filter by these things. But can I filter by the things that only the business knows? No, I cannot filter by application. I cannot filter by project. So my idea of the tags and naming convention is that they can help us gap the bridge between the technical and the business. Okay, so if my organization consists in 10 business units, I can make these business units part of the naming convention or part of the tagging, so I can then filter by this. Okay, so the cloud providers, they cannot help me in my business organization, but we need to bridge the gap between the business and the technical. And that's what tagging and naming conventions do, in my opinion. And of course, once this is in place, I can, without tagging, I am totally blind because I can only see that I am spending this much on virtual machines, I am spending this much on storage. Okay, I can see that I am spending on this specific S3 bucket, I am spending a lot. But what I need to be able to do is to assess, how am I? Am I good from a cost optimization perspective? Are my applications more or less costing what I expect them to cost? Or are they skyrocketing? Key questions such as, for example, if I have a development environment and a production environment, and my development environment costs twice as much, is this right? Does this make sense? Maybe yes, but maybe not. So it depends on every organization, but the idea is to uncover this kind of key insights. Okay, this is what tagging can do for us. It helps us avoid shooting in the dark, let's say, to try to optimize our costs. We can identify clearly where we should focus on and what we should improve. Okay. Okay, Victor, I saw you already advanced the slide. Okay. Regarding this one, I cannot simply just define 2 or 3 tags and let's begin with that and let's test how they work. No, it's not like that. We need a well-thought tagging strategy. We need to think through and we need to establish clear guidelines. Let's begin pillar by pillar. Okay, clarity and documentation. When I define a tagging strategy, of course, it needs to be properly documented. It needs to be clear, but also, and this is key, it needs to be simple. If I have a tagging policy that only my engineers understand, the finance team won't be able to understand and maybe no one will adopt it and it will be so difficult to promote its use across an organization, especially if it's a big organization and complex. So it needs to be clear and totally simple. Simplicity is key in tagging, but also in naming conventions, in my opinion, because naming conventions are, the key to a naming convention is that I need to be able to identify information of a resource by the name. So we need to think if our names are compliant to this idea, okay? So yeah, but apart from the clarity, the documentation, it needs to be consistent. It needs to be consistent from one project to another, from one region to another, from one cloud provider to another. It needs to be scalable, as it says there, no? It needs to be efficient. It's not something that as simple as it seems from the beginning. It also needs to be aligned with the business. As I was saying, we are trying to bridge the gap between the technical and the business. We need to bring the specificities of our organizations into our clouds, let's say. So that's kind of the idea. And last but not least, I need to be able to enforce my naming convention. In the example that Victor was telling at the beginning of the session about the name generator, the key there was not that they had a naming convention, is that they enforced the use of a name generator before creating any cloud resource. So how are we going to enforce our tagging policies, our naming conventions? Are we going to deny resources to be created, or imagine EC2 instances to be started if they don't comply to our policies? We can do that, definitely. Of course, we need to know the tools to do that, but that's kind of the idea. We need to think on all of these things when defining a naming convention. So yeah, a lot of things to cover, but we will try to give you some knowledge pills at least to help you on this journey. Okay, Victor, you can go ahead. Okay, for me, what are the essential components of a tagging policy? Of course, we need to define which tags are mandatory and which tags are optional. Usually, optional tags are things like nice to have. I can imagine if I have infrastructure as a service databases, it would be useful to know with a tag which database engine they have installed inside, because this is not something that I can see from the cloud provider's perspective. For example, Azure does not provide if I have installed SQL or a PostgreSQL or whatever in a virtual machine. So this is the perfect example, no, of an optional tag. And mandatory tag is something that I need to enforce across all of our resources. I also need to define what's the format. I am going to have, for example, if I define an environment tag, am I going to have 3 characters? For example, dev, pre as pre-production, pro for production, sandbox. What's the format of my tag? Is going to be a 5-letter project that matches with the project in my CMDB, these kind of things. All of this needs to be properly documented. I usually follow a kind of one kind of document per tag on which all of this is defined to cover all these bases. I also need to think what are the enforcement mechanisms I am going to use. For example, in AWS, we have different enforcement mechanisms. I can use tagging policies, I can use SCP policies, I can use AWS config policies. I need to think what I am going to do to control this. Without enforcement, a tagging policy, if it's optional, is something that only the teams if only the teams that they are open to this will implement, this is not going to work. I need to enforce them. But apart from enforcing, I need to be able to oversee tagging. So for this, I usually create tagging dashboards and naming convention dashboards that help me oversee how am I in tagging compliance and in adherence to naming conventions and all of that. Okay. And last but not least, tagging automation in the form of inheritance. For example, in Azure or any other cloud provider that uses management resources such as subscriptions, resource groups, accounts, resource groups also in AWS. In Google, we also have projects, we have folders. Am I going to use the inheritance on these resources or not? Am I going to establish the tags from infrastructure as code, such as Terraform, or am I going to let these tags to be inherited from subscription, from resource group? This depends, of course, in the hierarchy I'm following, but you get the idea of what I need to think on when I think of a tagging policy, okay? And then naming convention. It's kind of the same idea. I need to properly document all the rules that I have in place and the different name components description. For example, imagine that I define a naming convention based in separators, hyphen, for example, a separator. I can have first the cloud I am using. I can have them the project. I can have them usually I follow a rule of relevance. No, the left side is the most relevant, and then to the right side, less relevant thing. For example, right side can be a numeral, things like this. I need to break down all the components I will have in my names, and I need to explain what they do and what they describe, okay? And I also need to think in other conventions. For example, if I have 1,000 of projects I need to name in this naming convention, how am I going to put them in a 5-letter field, 3-letter field, following the format of my CMDB, whatever. This depends on your organization, but that's the idea, business units and all of that. And also I need to also be able to enforce. I love the idea of having, for example, infrastructure as code. And if I put the wrong name, in a resource, in a virtual machine, I will get, you are denied from creating this. I love these kind of things. And this is what I try to implement everywhere I work. And of course, it's key to to define which resources are subject to my naming convention. If I have a simple, I don't know, a small organization and it's really difficult to change this, I may only enforce this naming policy on management resources, on accounts, things like this. Of course, I don't think this is enough, but it's something that is definitely possible. Or I may enforce it on all the resources there are, and that would be for me the best option. And also we need to think that different resources may require different names. For example, in Azure, there are some resources such as storage accounts that you are not allowed to use a hyphen in the name. So all these things we need to consider it, to keep in consideration, let's say, when we are defining a naming convention, okay? Okay, but enough talk for me. Let's go to the next one. I want to open a small debate here, and I think it's interesting, no? What goes first, the chicken or the egg? Would you say that, would you first prepare a naming convention, or would you prefer to establish a good tagging policy? We want to hear you. Let's see the
So yeah,
Q&A.
feel free to drop it on the
Yeah.
on the chat or the Q&A.
What do you think?
Prefer the chat because it's easier.
A naming convention first. Yeah, I also I agree. Why not both? But yeah, Tanya, the idea is we are trying to put you on the spot on the side. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, both is not valid. Both is not a valid one.
It's the chicken or the egg. You need to have just one. I can give you at least some of my ideas, okay? And what I did regarding this strategy. Okay, tax is a must. I agree. Especially in AWS, for example, because of how names work. Name is just a tag in AWS. You can get by without a naming convention, but it depends a lot. Of course, I think a naming convention is easier to implement. Generally, it's easier to define, but not to implement, because names, by definition, are assigned at resource creation. So how can we change what's already there? We need to redeploy resources. If you tell your engineering team you need to redeploy all these databases, virtual machines, or functions, they are going to be angry for sure. So something to consider. On the other hand, tagging can be more complex because I need to define different tags. I need to define how I'm going to enforce all these things we were discussing, no? The inheritance, all of this. But they can be changed anytime. I can have my version 1 of the tagging policy, apply it on all my resources, and 3 months after, I can do version 2 without any impact on the resources. The engineering teams, they can be happy because we don't need to redeploy everything. But yeah, I'm reading you. Adopting naming convention. I agree first. And lately you can refine. Totally, Gabriel. I totally agree. And Latif also added that. Yeah. Tagging can be changed. Exactly. And I think we can start simple as Bruce is saying, no? We can, for tagging especially, we don't need to have the most complex tagging policy that no one understands. We can start simple and we can go from them and iterate. We can always change the tags, okay? So, yeah, Tanya, I agree. It's difficult to build rules with naming convention, but we have some friends, not easy friends, I would say, things like regex, regular expressions. We can use regular expressions if we are able to define them to be consistent to our naming policies. Yeah, good point, Bruce. This is one thing we are going to cover later, that once we are doing cost allocation, our tags are sacred because all of our reports will rely on them. But exactly. Okay, let's hear Sharon's perspective. Clear naming convention first, more important, of course. Naming immediate and structured way. Exactly. I can also say that usually, if you have a proper naming convention, even simple, you can begin to do some cost allocation with that. And it will help you in the first stages of cost allocation. But I will tell you my experience later in the presentation about it. But later on, you will need to put more effort for sure. So, okay. So nice to hear your views. Please put any question you have on all these topics, and we will try to answer them.
Yeah, feel free to put everything on the question and answers, because otherwise it's going to be super long. Put on the question and answer.
Before Andrew question. He struggles to understand the benefit in a naming convention when you can just add its components as tags. Okay, this is a really good question, and this is the kind of question an AWS cloud engineer or cloud FinOps would do, because AWS name is just a tag, and once you think like that, there is no going back. I totally agree on that. But the names are not just for the tags. The tags are only, imagine that, for example, as I was saying, tags are only visible from cloud provider's perspective. Or maybe, for example, if you are exporting the cost in BigQuery or cost management in Azure, there you can see the tags. But if you have a SOC service and there is an alert on your virtual machine, and your virtual machine is test 1, 2, 3, you are in trouble, because if you cannot infer, the idea of naming convention is to infer some information by the name, okay? And yeah, I know that every cloud provider have different name convention rules and all of that. We need to document all of that, and we need to keep all of that in consideration when defining our naming policies. Okay, let's go forward. Now, let's focus on the good stuff. What can tagging do for us? Of course, we can gain complete visibility. And as someone was saying earlier, this is really important, because once I set up a tagging policy in my cost management lines of costs, for example, or when I export my cloud bills, I will see the tags to each line of cost. I will see that this virtual machine has a tag with development environment or a tag with project ABC, whatever. I will see all of that. But this information will only be present after I have put the effort into defining a tagging strategy and implemented it. If I don't have anything, like tagging is not retroactive. This means that every minute I am with tagging, I am missing out cost allocation in this area, especially. I am not able to see the tags. I am not able to filter the costs using cost allocation tags in AWS, for example. Of course, user-defined tags, not AWS tags. These kind of things. This is why it's so important. And also, we need to consider changes to our tagging policy will affect our cloud reports, and we need to consider all of that. Okay. Then we are able to allocate the costs to different teams, different projects. By doing that, we can, for example, see that this project has an unwanted, unexpected spike in costs. So we should research, and we should see why this is the case and all of that. So it helps us also identify waste and identify where we need to improve. If, as I was saying earlier, if my development environment is costing twice as much as my production environment, and I am not doing any development effort, I am not putting out new features, I am not correcting any bugs, why is that? And then I may be able to identify that I have premium, I don't know, premium storage accounts in my development environment, things like that, or 16 core virtual machines in my development environment. Is this something that makes sense? These kind of questions and these kind of insights for me, okay? So this is what we want to uncover. But tagging is not only about FinOps. We will delve deeper into this. Tagging is also about other things. For example, to support operations. The perfect example for me is I can have an automation runbook that shut down virtual machines that have environment equal to depth. If all my development environments can be shut down, then I can use an automation that rely on these tags instead of, I don't know, searching for where is the subscription or the resource group or the AWS account this is placed on, no? These kind of things. And also, we can use them for compliance. We can mark specific resources to be subject to, I don't know, some regulations such as DORA or ISO 27001, these kind of things. We can mark specific resources. Or the perfect example for me, I can specify what's the maintenance window of a virtual machine. So my operations team, they know that they can apply the patching or make modifications or shut down the virtual machine every Sunday at 3 p.m. until 5 p.m. These kind of things, okay? I think it's really interesting to explore all these things that go beyond tagging. So yeah, let's go forward, Victor. as we were saying, we can do a lot of things in FinOps with tagging. We can first gain visibility, which is clear in any tagging exercise. I need to gain visibility on the points and the areas where I need to improve. So I am able to define cost optimization initiatives, long-term, short-term, mid-term, all of this. Of course, our cost allocation accuracy will improve, that's clear. And when we say here, increase the efficiency of our cloud resources, when we do tagging, we are not optimizing the cost, not at all. But we are optimizing cloud resources because we are optimizing the time of our cloud engineers, of our cloud FinOps practitioners, and all of that, because we are saving time from them, and they don't need to go to the lowest level of cost line to detect some anomaly or things like that. So I think it's really, really interesting to have this. Okay, so let's go forward, Victor. This is where the where the meat is. Okay, this, in my opinion, are all the tools that we need to be able to know, of course, in order to harness tagging and naming conventions. Let's start by what Victor was mentioning, name generators. I think name generators are essential. And of course, we can think building a name generator is so difficult. I have seen others do it, but yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of name generators available in internet from Azure. There are a lot of people working on this. So you can just use a name generator. And the name generator is essential for change management because we are setting up an enforcement method at the start of the chain, naming a resource. So for me, they are a tool that is essential. Either you build it or you adopt a tool to help you on this. There are even Terraform providers that can do that for you. Okay. And we also need to identify the different tools at our disposal in each cloud provider. For example, JSON tags. JSON tags are a specific thing of Azure where it's what I call compound tags because we can put multiple tag components inside a tag value. And this will show in our cost lines. And this is something that can be really interesting because I can have, I don't know, a CMDB reference with the asset name and the project name and all of that just inside one tag, which also helps us overcome the limitation of, I think in Azure it's around 50 tags maximum per object. So all these kind of things. We also need to understand how tag inheritance works in cost management, which is a recent feature that can be useful, how to harness the use of resource graph, which is something unique in my view in Azure that can provide a lot of help in overseeing the tags. We need to also work with Azure workbooks, Azure automation, to be able to put the right tags to have scalable and, as we were saying, simple tags in our infrastructure as code, to be able to filter the tags we want and to check with Power BI, with PowerShell, sorry, and Azure CLI and all these things. In AWS is more or less the same. We should be able to define SCP policies, tagging policies, config policies, depending on our enforcement needs. And we can also harness the idea of default tags, which is really a nice addition to AWS provider in Terraform, to understand how AWS generated tags work and AWS user tags, the specifics of AWS. For example, in AWS, I was saying, no, name is another tag. It's nothing special. It's just another tag in the list of tags of an object. No, all these things. We need to understand all these things to be able to harness the power of tagging. No, I would say. And the same idea, CLI, the tag holes in GCP, the difference between GCP labels and GCP tags. Okay, what's the use case of each one? What are the limitations? How can we use labels, tags in billing? So yeah, some food for thought in this slide at least. And sorry, I sometimes get too technical, but that's my DNA and that's how I work. Okay, let's go forward. This is one topic I love, infrastructure as code. Let's imagine we have a really big organization where infrastructure as code is enforced and everything is deployed through infrastructure as code. I can be the best practitioner, FinOps practitioner in the world and devise the perfect tagging policy. If I am not able to put that tagging policy into the way our cloud engineers and our cloud operations team work in deploying resources, if I am not able to implement my tagging policy properly through infrastructure as code, it will serve nothing for me. I won't be able to do anything, because if teams cannot adopt what I have defined, yeah, what's the use? So in my opinion, we should be able to put our ideas in naming conventions, in tagging policies, into Terraform, into CloudFormation, both single stacks or stacks, whatever, into Bicep in Azure, even ARM templates, because ARM and Bicep are still used. For example, in Azure OpenAI, you can only do some things without in Terraform. Terraform is limited because in Terraform you need to define the provider needs to be updated, all these things. So I think we should be able to scale our tags, to implement our tags, to have proper tagging rules, to make tags part of our infrastructure as code modules. So this is essential for a tagging strategy and naming convention to succeed. And last but not least, Kubernetes. Kubernetes by default is a challenge for any FinOps practitioner. Let me explain why. A Kubernetes cluster is a cluster that usually hosts different workloads from different projects, from different environments, maybe, from different business units. So by definition, it's usually a shared environment. So I need to be able to use labels. Labels are the equivalent to tags in Kubernetes. I need to be able to use labels to do cost allocation as well. And usually, cost allocation can be done through tools such as InfraCost. I have had experience with InfraCost, and I think it's a great tool. But there are other open cost, I think, is the open source alternative. And there are many tools. I think Pavel is here. He was here at least a while ago. He created he's not now, but he created a tool that also did this cost allocation for containers. And it's something that a lot of cost management tools are doing right now. So really interesting points. And I also need to be able to enforce labels in Kubernetes. There are different ways to do it. Kyverno, for example, is one way to do it. There are others. This OPA, I think OPA, Kyverno is one, but we need to be able to dominate the different ways. We can, for example, deny resources upon creation if they are not compliant to our policies, as simple as that. Okay, and let's have a little fun now. I will stop talking about these kind of complex things, and we want to bust some myths about tagging with clear examples. So we are going to put on the Mythbusters caps now, and try to solve the world by busting some things. Okay, let's go with the first one. A lot of people say that and feel free, please. We want you to put any comment, any opinion you have on this, because as Victor was saying, we know that this is some of a, let's say, complicated topic. So feel free to put your opinion there, and it will be really insightful for us. Okay, tagging is hard and defined to implement. Maybe depends on the perspective, but for me, this is a myth busted. I will explain why. I will explain it with the example of my current company, B2 Impact. Okay, I joined B2 Impact in almost 3 years ago. It was they had a lot of cloud resources and so on, but it was more like a greenfield from a cloud governance perspective. So I chose to establish first a naming convention, as we were discussing earlier, the egg or the chicken. No, I chose to define first a naming convention, work from there. So what I did was to define a naming convention there. It was okay for the cost allocation needs we had by then, but we were evolving. We were being more mature in the cloud. We adopted a cloud operations team. We grew bigger. We tagging become inevitable. So what I did was to define a really, really simple tagging policy consisting on 6 tags, no more, no less. And it was not hard. It was environment, country, these kind of simple things. And from then on, I am able to do a lot of things. I am able to filter, for example, by project, to, I don't need to have even resources of the same project under the same subscription or under the same resource group. I don't need to think on all of that because I have my tags. And even from these 6, I have added a new one, application. And I am now able to say how much an application is costing and also attribute this application to this business owner or to this technical owner. So I am gaining a lot of value. So for me, we were saying it earlier, tagging doesn't need to be complicated. Tagging is not about engineering teams making the most complex things that no one understands. No, tagging can be really simple and can be valuable for us, for the business. We cannot forget that we are trying to bridge our business with the technical part. That's what we are doing with tagging. Okay, so that's the first myth. Second one, okay, I am a small company. I don't need tagging. Okay, this is a good one as well. Okay, maybe you are a small company now, but your company can be bought by a big company. This is something that in IT, it happens all the time. Or you can become big. If you sell your product to a lot of clients, then you can become big. For me, tagging and naming conventions are the foundations to our building. We can have a small shed in the garden. Without the foundations, it will go down in the same way, in my opinion. So even small companies, small organizations, we should invest time in tagging. You can never know where your small organization will go in the future. You need to have proper foundations, proper governance foundations that you can build upon. That's my opinion. So, and you can start small and build from there. Of course, I am not saying that this is not challenging. It is, I can tell you by my own experience, but I think a lot of things can change in time. So exactly, Tania, you were saying, if you are small, you need to think big. If I am thinking on the cloud governance, I need to think in a scalable way. I need to think that everything can scale anytime because that's the nature of the beast, essentially. Okay, so for me, this is another myth busted. So let's go forward to the next one. So, okay, this is a good one. My organization is too big and complex for tagging. You have totally surrendered and there is nothing you can do. Like in this big bank with millions of cloud spend, all hope is lost. There is not a way I am able to implement my tagging policy. Okay. In this kind of organizations, of course, I know how difficult it is. I have worked in the past in organizations such as this. I think in these organizations it's clear the need of a center of excellence for FinOps. And this is where the tagging policies definition needs to happen. Of course, it can also happen in a small business unit. But again, I am going to say the same thing I was saying before. We need to think big, but we can start small. If I am in this big organization and no one is doing tagging, then maybe I can start doing tagging in my own business unit and I can lead by example. Because if I am doing things right and I am able to bring value, for sure, management is going to notice. It's going to, and my ideas can extend. And if I am working in a center of excellence of FinOps, I can also demonstrate and I can also give them the pitch and the value of tagging. It's part of FinOps practitioners. We should spread the message. We should preach on what tagging can do, because sometimes the teams don't know that tagging is, for example, more than cost allocation or more than just basic metadata. So that's kind of this myth. I think, yes, it's really challenging. I agree. Maybe we can myth busted slightly, yeah, because yeah, I agree, it's really challenging, but there are ways. Let's break the ice. Let's start small. Let's apply tagging policies in a limited scope. Let's demonstrate that it works and let's get the buy-in from there. That's my take on this. Okay, this is a really interesting one as well that we have already covered along the way. Tagging is only for cost allocation. No, it's not only for cost allocation. As I was saying, no, you can go forward, Victor. We can do a lot of things with tagging. We can shut down automatically virtual machines on a schedule if they have development tags, for example, or pre-production tags. We can have security or compliance information. We can use it to our business needs. Again, we are bridging the gap between the business and the technical, but we can use tags. For example, in AWS and Google, this is for me incredible. We can use tags for IAM. We can give permissions to see resources, to read resources in development environment, to all resources that have the dev environment tag. We can just do it. You know how much time would it take to go account by account, giving the IAM permissions or doing the delegation? Or yeah, so it's really time consuming. What we are trying to do is to save our practitioners, our engineers time, and that's what it does, okay? And in Google is the same. We can use tags for IAM conditions and to allow access to specific resources based on tags. Again, we can, for example, I will give you 2 examples of tags that I think they are really interesting. Criticality tag. If I can mark the criticality of my resources really high, don't touch, this is one, and then lowest criticality, okay. Then operations team, anyone that's working with a resource can know that this resource is not to be touched if they don't want management to shout at them, for example. And this is essential for business. Again, we are bridging the gap from technical to business. And another, I think, we can also use tags for KPIs. Let me give you an example. I worked in the past, and I think it's really interesting. We were struggling to measure the modernization level of an organization. We wanted to, okay, how much infrastructure as a service resources are we using compared to platform as a service or software as a services resources? And this may seem like a simple thing for CEOs or C-level not to think on. It's easy to understand, but you know how hard can it be to implement this, okay? So what I used was a tag, automated tag, that was assigned to all resources automatically without. And having that, we were able to put in a report the percentage of resources in a pie, how many infrastructure as a service we had versus platform as a service, for example. So, and this is an essential KPI in my view to see the maturity of an organization working in the cloud. So this is the value. We can bring value to business with tags. It's not only about finance. It's not only about cost allocation. So I think it's really interesting. And the last point is, of course, I was saying before, tags need to be simple, but also we need to bring other teams into the table to be able to define a proper tagging strategy. Because, for example, the finance team will know a lot more about the business, about what they need, than the engineering team, most probably. So FinOps is about collaboration. Why don't we also collaborate to define together a tagging policy that works for everyone and that everyone understands? If engineering team defines the most complicated tagging policy that no one is going to follow because they don't understand, they are techie things that no one understands, this is not going to succeed. It's going to fail for sure. But on the other hand, if we decide together what to do and what brings value for us, we will have a proper tagging strategy, in my opinion. So yeah, that was the idea. And last but not least, okay, I think this is the case for all of us, and including me. Sorry, I thought I was muted, but no. Okay, we are always fighting with resource constraints. I am fighting with resource constraints. I am trying to have more cloud architects in my team because we are in too many projects at once, and I think this is the case for almost everyone for sure. Regardless the size of the company, we struggle to have resources to do what we need to do. How can we combine this with tagging? We have always pressing things to do. I will give you my example. I work as a lead cloud architect in B2 Impact, and I'm not focused at all from time to time, but I'm not solely focused on FinOps. I do everything. I oversee a lot of projects, migration projects, you can imagine, modernization, refactoring, all kinds of projects. I need to be on top of all of them because I need to oversee all of this. I don't have time to do tagging, but what I do is to, again, I try to do what I can when I can. And this is, for me, this is enough. So I try to save some time, a month, to work on this, to iterate, to improve. I don't need to have 2 months, a 10. Of course, I would like to have a 10 people team working in FinOps for me. Of course, that would be awesome, but that's not reality. So I need to work with what I have. And what I have is, from time to time, I am able to work with my team on this. I need to improve my tagging. I need to improve my cost reports, and that's what I do. And I don't need to be frustrated, because honestly, this is reality in IT in general. We don't have the resources we need, and this is not going to change anytime soon. So this is my take. I can get by doing what I can. Of course, I need to save some time to do it. This is important. And management needs to understand that governance is important, and some time needs to be saved, not just for tagging, but for governance in general. So that's my idea. That's how especially I deal with this kind of resource constraints for setting tagging policies, which is also a challenge, I would say. Okay, so this is where our presentation about tagging and naming conventions ends, the first part, and we would like to hear you a little bit. Victor has some more content aligned for you, but we would like to hear what you think on this. Do you have any questions that we can address?
We have a lot of questions, Alfonso.
Oh yeah, I can see.
For example, For example, Eunice is asking, I am cleaning the BU tags, but just discovered that no tag exists at the resource group and even at the subscription level. How best can we approach this?
Okay, my idea on this. I guess you are talking about Azure. What I do in Azure, when I have no tags at resource level, and you don't even have them at subscription level and at a resource group as well, the easiest way to have some first step for tagging is you could apply tags at resource group level manually, even manually, or through infrastructure as code, whatever you want to do, or at subscription level, and you can use inheritance through Azure policy. So all the resources contained in those resource groups will get the tag. Of course, then afterwards, this is a way to get by, let's say, but you should properly tag these resources through infrastructure as code in an automated way, not prone to human failure, all of this. But my approach is you can do it in a fast way if you rely on Azure policy and inheritance tagging policies. That's how I would do it, at least.
Okay, the next one is a very common tag key is service or application. Some resources, however, serve multiple services application. Example, network resources. In this case, what is the best practice to tag this? One can use generic tag values, example, share, or list all applications using the resource, but neither seems to be an optimal solution.
Laurent, unfortunately, there is no perfect way to do things. I will explain how I do it. For example, in my I also extend this idea to environments. There are some resources that don't have an environment. They are not development or production resources. They are shared resources. For example, if I have Active Directory, Windows Active Directory, this will be shared across different environments, not just production or whatever. So I use a hub. A tag, and hub for me means that is a resource that don't have an environment attached to it. It's a shared. So in my opinion, if you have an application tag, you should have a way to put share. For example, what I do is to use the term CCC as for 3 Cs, because this is a convention I have, and all the resources that are marked with CCC tag, they are shared, and the cost of them needs to be allocated, distributed equally to different business units. But of course, I have different business units distribution as well. So that's how I do it. There is no perfect way, but that's how I do it, if it serves for something.
Yeah, that's
okay. We're going to have the last one, and then
okay.
we're going to have the rest we're going to answer after Victor. Who should, in your opinion, define and own a tagging strategy, and who should define and own the naming convention?
Okay, this is a this is a good one. Okay, so let's imagine that we have this center of excellence of FinOps. Imagine I am going to go big. Okay, so we have a center of excellence. We have some FinOps practitioners, and we can even rely on the different roles as the FinOps Foundation described. No, we have different practitioners, and we have the FinOps lead, and then we have other FinOps personas like engineering and all of that. Okay. In my opinion, the practitioners, the ones that are deep in the mud analyzing what's happening, they are the ones that at least can propose some things. They should bring these ideas and what they are proposing, because they are focused on FinOps, unlike engineering teams. They should work together with engineering and finance to define tags. What happens if engineerings are not cooperating with FinOps practitioners, which happens a lot of times? I am busy with my things and my deployments, and I don't want these tagging guys to bug me anymore. So this is the work of the FinOps lead, in my opinion, to give them the authority, let's say, to bring other teams to the table. I know it's difficult. I know it's challenging. I have suffered in my own skin, but this is how it should be. We need to have some kind of a sponsor up there with management that pushes FinOps across the organization and that put the right people on the table. If you don't have the right people on the table to discuss and define, you won't be able to succeed, in my opinion. So yeah.
I think buy-in is super core for these things, and thanks, Alfonso, for the questions. There will be more room to answer more questions in the later. But now I have a question for you, no? So if you've been seeing the presentation on what Alfonso said, so basically if you followed what they showed you about cloud native tools for tagging and found out that you can actually have proper tagging and proper naming convention with them, right? And then if you, for example, then the next step that you did is to apply this small tagging policy for your small business, or actually for your big business, you can actually have some tagging policy in place. And then if you have infrastructure as code to automate and enforce your company as your next step. So do you think with all these steps that today we have showed you, you would have an excellent or a very good cost allocation? Can you tell me that in the chat? Because I want to know your thoughts, right? So how many of you have been, through this process? How many of you think that with these things in place, your tagging policy will improve, your cost allocation will improve, or what are your feelings regarding what we have explained today? Can you put that comments on the chat? I encourage everyone to put the comments because I want to know your thoughts. And then, if you don't mind me, in the last 5 to 10 minutes, I will introduce you something that we've been working a lot in the last few weeks, and we would like to present you, that we think it can help you with your tagging and naming convention. So just wanted to, I don't know if everyone has any feedback, any comments. At the end, we will go through a question, but I want to know, if you have, what are your opinions on what you've seen today?
And of course, we want to know if this has been useful for you, if this content is interesting for you, and all of that as well.
Yeah, feel free to share. We will share everything after the recording. So thanks for the feedback, Eunice. Thanks for the feedback, Sayan. We will send both the recording and the slides to everyone that attended. So no worries on that. But there is more content to come now. It's good. Thanks for the feedback. Okay, I hope. So with that, I hope. Thanks. That was Alfonso's idea, the Mythbuster. I have a different approach, but I think it's super, super fun, and it's awesome. I love it. Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, so we are going to now introduce one thing that we've been working a lot into. So this doesn't end here. So now we are going to introduce you to mastering FinOps, tagging and naming conventions. So this is going to be our program to help you achieve become a tagging expert, know all the tools that we have explained, manage all the infrastructure as code that we have explained, and everything that you do in a live class. And what will this consist on, right? So this is going to be a 6-week masterclass online presented by Alfonso and help with us for getting all the contents and all the thing. So this is going to be live as these webinars. This is going to be only for, of course, for the registrant, and it's going to be responding all your doubts. Everything in detail that's going to be explain about tagging, naming convention, etc., everything that we talked today, but in depth, to become a master of tagging and naming convention for your business. So just describe you a bit overview. It's going to be talking about naming conventions the first week, then about tagging, and then we go deep into infrastructure as code and how infrastructure goes with tagging and naming conventions to be able to handle everything. Next week, we will talk with Alfonso about tagging and naming convention and enforcement and remediation. Some of the things that we have talked today that are super key for managing the tagging and not to lose control of it, which is one of the main problems, I think, for tagging. Finally, we are going to talk about overseeing tagging and naming conventions. We'll provide you some tools on how to do that. And at the end, there will be a show and tell. So we want you to provide us on how you have taken advantage of our course and how you have learned and what you have learned, and show us what's going on. So this is super important for us. There is going to be projects on each week. There's going to be example each week, and we want you to be hands-on, and we want you to learn once and for all about tagging and naming conventions, right? And you may have thought about like who this works for. Any FinOps struggling on cost allocations that have learned about here today. Cloud architects that, have FinOps between their tasks and they have been asked about policies, tagging, naming conventions, how to actually do that. They are very welcome in our course because they will learn a lot. Then finance people. You don't need to be technical for this course. There will be technical resources. You will learn a lot of technical content, and you can share this technical content with your engineers and with your department, but you don't actually have to be technical to take advantage of our cohort course. And then, of course, managers that want to know the resources, to want to know the ins and outs of how tagging and naming conventions work for FinOps, but also for security, for other compliance items. Everything will be helpful. And as we talked about in the webinar, this is independent of your cloud provider. So we will be cloud agnostic, and we will work with tools such as Terraform, Kubernetes, and all. We will go through each of the main cloud providers to be able to dive deep into them. So then we will also include class recording. So some people will have, let's say, time differences or anything. So you will be able to have class recordings in our course. So just in case you can access to it, the recording will be provided to you. So in this case, just to showcase about, we are going to be listing everything that we are offering to you. So let's say this 6 weeks masterclass plus the recordings we have here yet, but this is not all. We have weekly Q&A sessions. So every Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, we will host Q&A sessions with Alfonso and with Damian and me to talk, to fix your problems, to know your issues, to know everything about what is going on, and to help you with everything that you need to be able to succeed with the program. So that would be the next thing. Then, of course, you have an exclusive repo that has examples with ready-to-use code for infrastructure as code that basically you can find anywhere else. And it's super useful for actually, giving the jump into being able to know how to actually take these tagging policies that are super difficult to be, that are those naming conventions that you have doubts about how to build, this already be provided by you. So some examples that you can see here, this is real code that we have prepared for you that Alfonso have been working on. So you can have examples here, and you can see on the left side how many things you have in place. So definitely there is a lot of work put in there. So
yeah,
Alfonso.
I have been working for months on this to cover everything. You were asking about technical. I want to cover all the tools, all the different cloud native tools that we have, and even external if we have. And I want you to have examples, to have examples of policies, Azure policies, SCP policies, all of that, to go from zero to hero here. I want to, that's where what we aim for is to go in depth in this from the technical perspective.
Yeah, so basically tagging and naming convention will be solved for you, because now you will have all the solutions that you need. Plus, you will be able to know how to actually do them and how to actually maintain them. And basically, as on FinOps, you may know, time is a very valuable asset in business, and time is what saves money to you and to your company. So, okay, we have the 6 weeks, the Q&A, and the repo of code, but that's not all. So we have also a set of workbooks for Azure tagging and naming conventions that I have seen and I have tested, and they are super useful, that Alfonso made as well for you to use. And to be honest, this is something that it will take several weeks for you to build. And even though with the knowledge, Alfonso, it took it some time to build and actually showcase everything. But now it's ready for you to use, just for joining the course. So basically, you will be able to visualize in a glimpse the compliance of your tagging policies and your naming conventions, manage everything, and you don't have to create a custom dashboard and learn all the dashboarding that you need to learn, or avoid the struggle of controlling everything on how do I control this or that. This is totally made by you. So we add that to the item, but that's not all. And this is the super useful thing that you have seen that is great to be using, is the naming conventions generator. So having a naming conventions tool that helps you unify your names across the company is something that is super useful, and we've been able to have one. And for everyone that uses or participate in the course, they will have access to it as an application. So this is the whole list of what we are offering. So the 6 week masterclass, the repo of code, the recordings, the Q&A sessions, the Azure tagging and naming convention workbooks, and the naming convention generators, right? Okay, so you're seeing that the value is about 8,000 euros, and of course we are not going to charge anybody that amount, because we consider that you are not super mega rich, and that's of course something that you cannot pay. But what would this be worth to you? I would love to have some answers in the chat about what is going to be, what do you think this could value? I mean, you can randomly say a number, but what do you think this could value? It would be awesome to have some insights on the chat about it. Before I reveal what it's actually costing and what's going to be inside, the price.
While you think on this, let me say that we have these 6 sessions, 1 hour and a half each, approximately. And apart from this, the idea is to follow the whole process, no? And for your learning process, we will have exercises on each session that we will correct. We will give you feedback, and we will be able to, in the last session, the idea is to kind of pack everything together that we've learned. Of course, the name generator is an asset of the course, but we will also cover all options of other name generators. We will use them as an examples. Maybe you can use that as well. So we have tried to cover everything there is. That's kind of the approach we followed on doing this, and it took a lot of work, I can tell you.
Yeah. So depends on the depth of the different tools, I would say. Yeah, we will have, so take into account that we have 6 weeks, 1.5 hour sessions. The naming convention generator is super useful, and the Azure tagging and naming convention workbook are top class, are something that is already tested on companies. So I would say everything. Plus, we also have the Q&A session. So Eric said 1,000 to 1,500 euros. So I have to say that you, at the moment, valued us a bit higher, but I cannot tell you how much. So yeah, but that's something. Anyone has any other guesses? 499.00. Oof, that's a very good guess. That's a very good guess. I love that guess, Patrick. I think you are smart because you have made a very good guess. It's not exactly,
No, since that inside information.
but it's very good. It's very good. I think 199. No, that's a good guess. Also, it's you are getting there. So maybe I should go with the price bill. Okay, so. This, sorry, now, okay, this is the price that we are offering to the public. So for $5.99, that would be the standard price for everyone to access the course. This is not the price that you will get if you wait 2 minutes, because we have a bonus for this instance of today. But as you say, between those numbers, it was the price number that we are offering. So yeah, I think from the total value that we get, I think it's a super recommended price for what we are doing, because it's 6 weeks program. I don't think you can find something like this for this price, but we know it's the first try. So we are going to try and make it affordable for everyone. And of course, your learning is guaranteed. We are using a platform to host the courses and to host the material, and they have a satisfaction guarantee. So if everyone wants to try and then finds out that it's not for them, or they don't have the time to develop, no worries, because there will be refunds available. I think it's at least 30 days since you buy the course, and then of course from there it will start. So you can test out, maybe have the first session and see if you like it, and then if not, we can go with the refund. So today we have the bonus, as you mentioned. So if anyone has any doubts about the course, we can have one-on-one sessions. With that, I will send you. I will post the link to that later on. But of course, you can drop us a message on LinkedIn, and we will have more information. But today, and the link that Damian posted in the chat, if you go to that link, and you will get the discount of today's webinar. And basically, this is a very special discount that is not going to last. Basically, we'll have it for 1 hour, and that's all. So everyone that wants to join for this price, there's of course going to be more things, but this one today is going to be on the hour, and it's going to put the price in 299. So for not even 300 euros, you will be able to access this 6 weeks program, and there would be this is going to be 1 hour, so this is going to be probably maybe till 9 when we remove it, and this price is not going to come back. Like we are making it because it's a very special thing that we are doing today, and that we are offering for everyone that have assisted. And I know it started late, so everyone that wants to join, you can pick the link in the chat, and feel free to join now, because as mentioned, this is not going to be anything, and this is not going to happen again. We may have to create others discounts, but this one is going to be the lowest price. Which day of the week and time of the day? It's going to be the classes. It's going to be Tuesdays, 6:30, the same time that this webinar started, but on Tuesdays. And then, so 6:30, and then there's going to be the question and answer is going to be Thursdays. So on Thursdays we will have at this time. Basically, we will. I think it's this time or a bit earlier. We will host the Q&A session. All the information we'll have. It's on the doc. So for special cases, paying from your region, we can go through every special case, and we can go through it and check if there is any problem, and we can assist you on there. I think Maven will help us there. But if you have anything, drop us an email to the address of this webinar, or to anything, and you can send us the information. If I still need that's fine. So that's totally fine. We will, if there are special cases that have any difficulties, we can keep the offer, because we know who has access the course. So we will send you a link, and if anyone has a similar problem, please drop me a message. So Nilis, yeah, it's another time for Australia region. Yeah, unfortunately we cannot fit all the regions. As mentioned, there is the recording, and there are we can try and make any alternative time for if there are more Australians, we can make an alternative time. So yeah, I would be working on that as well if you have anything. But yeah, the recording will be there, but the live sessions, unfortunately we don't have the team to support multiple regions, but that would be interesting to drive from 189. So unfortunately that's our offer. I mean, we will probably make another courses in the future. So if you have any special reason, or if you if you need anything else, we will be able to provide the value. But yeah, unfortunately we cannot lower the price, because otherwise it will be lowering our time value. And yeah, that's the special offer that we are doing it today. But feel free to send us an email, and we can go through your case, Charles. There's no problem. We are trying to make everyone have the opportunity, but of course there are some limits. So as mentioned, just wanted to recap a bit, because we are getting close to the time. So today we have talked about why tagging is the key to cost allocation excellence, the great elements of tagging policies and naming conventions, how tagging, and we busted all the myths with Alfonso. We had a very nice time. So we will have to work on that, how we can bust it. And now with the course, it's going to be how you can actually make that real, and then how a small business can apply tagging and naming conventions, and also how a complex environment can improve via this. So just to finish it up, and then we can go with the questions. So by enrolling in our course, you'll be able to implement a robust tagging policies, automate your tagging processes, and gain complete visibility to your cloud spending using tools that everyone can access. And of course, being able to spot and optimize your cost and maximize your ROI, and finally become a FinOps tagging and naming convention expert. So that's the code that you need to go through. Yeah, feel free to reach out to this email And then let me put the email on the chat. And on the subject, put mastering FinOps. And then whatever you want to put. And you can reach out us to that email. What of the link for the one-to-one? I will have to provide you. You can drop us. So anyone interested in the one-to-ones, please send us a message on LinkedIn or maybe comment. I don't know. One. Yeah, comment one on the chat to our, and we can get that and we can process it because we have your emails from the webinar and we can go through all the questions because I actually don't have the scheduling purposes. So feel free to comment that on the chat to any of us or the panelists, and we'll be able to go through a one-to-one. Or you can drop us a message on LinkedIn. There is no problem on that. So yeah, as mentioned, this is the offer that we are seeing and we are offering today. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. We are going to go through now all the questions that you may have about the course, and of course from the content that the webinar was talked about. And as mentioned, this offer lasts till 9, so you only have 1 hour for those cases that are interested in the course, but they are not. They cannot pay it right now for whatever reason, paying difficulties or budgeting issues. Please reach out to the Smart Clouds email so we can address your case in particular, because we want everyone to be able to work on this. So now I'm giving the floor to Damian. So just one last question. Do you recognize certificates that are recognized by the FinOps Foundation? We would give a certificate of completion to the ones that are completing the course. They are not related to the FinOps Foundation. Those are independent ones, but these courses have the certificate of completion provided by Maven. So yeah, there would be the link on the site is not working. Okay.
I will check. Just one other thing, you can also buy this through your company or whatever. I guess for some of you, maybe it's easier to buy this to ask your employer to buy this course for you and all of that. I think you can reach Smart Clouds for that as well. And the last topic before closing is that we are so happy. We have been preparing this, working hard on this for the past few weeks because we felt there was a gap in technical content and technical courses about FinOps. So this is the reason. This is why we are here. We want to share with you, and this is the first of many courses, I would say. Let's see.
So thanks, Paddy, for being here. And yeah, go ahead, Damien.
Yeah, question. So do we have samples for all the most commonly used cloud resources?
For cloud resources, I would say, we will have examples for compute, for storage, for almost anything, right?
We have the name generator.
Yeah, I understand where this topic is coming. We have examples of different in all the different tagging tools. We have examples of different ways to use the tool, different tags, different, for example, enforcing a tag that has fixed values, enforcing a tag that has a fixed length in the field, things specific to tagging, but we are not focusing on cloud resources type, for example, virtual machines. No, it's not like that. Of course, in our workbook in Azure, yes, we have virtual machines, we have disk, we have the most commonly used services, but this is only for the naming convention and tagging dashboard we prepared. Okay, not for the examples of the tagging policies and all of that. The examples of the tagging policies, there is no perfect tagging policy or no naming convention that is perfect. What we give you is a lot of examples so you can build your own. The idea is in the course, you will understand how it works. And with these tools ready-made, you will be able to join them together to create what you want to. That's kind of the idea.
Yep.
Okay. Next one, in addition, some tags have different business unit at both the resource and resource group or subscription level. How best can this be addressed and clean?
Some tags have different business units, different conventions for business units. For example, I don't know, one is 3-letter, one is, and at both the resource, I think you need to address. In these cases, I think the best way is to analyze, maybe come up with a clean slate. Why? Because it's so difficult to solve something that is done halfway, you know? You need to, if it's done halfway and then you have half the resources in one way and half the resources in another, maybe choose the best half and then apply that approach on the rest, or just clean them all, because it's going to be so difficult. That's how I would tackle that one.
Okay, here's a nice one. How often we should review our tag and name convention policy?
Depends on your needs. I would say if it's working, don't touch it, especially with naming conventions. If it's catering to your needs, that's perfectly fine. If it's not, then you need to touch it. As an example, I was saying I devised a tagging policy with 6 tags, and in time I thought, okay, I need to add this new application tag, for example. It provided me a lot of value. It made sense. Of course, I took the time to implement it all across our cloud resources, and to tag all these applications in each resource, it's a lot of time, but it was worth it. And this is the approach. Let's start small and then you can iterate. And I would say on demand, whenever you need to, whenever you feel the need to do it. But naming convention shouldn't be changed, because you can only set that at resource creation level. You need to think on a naming convention that's solid and works for everything. I know it's hard, but yeah, that's what we want to help you with. So.
And how to overcome AWS SCP limitation with resources without requiring API calls. Example, EBS volumes, root volumes are created implicitly during EC2 launch.
Okay, SCP policies. SCP policies, for me, they have a clear specific use, is to deny specific actions. The idea is not to, for example, we can deny the creation of a database or the creation of an S3 bucket or starting a virtual machine, okay? But they are not to be used like widely. They cannot prevent everything. If you want to use a SCP policy to cover all your resources, then you need to list all the actions you want to deny. Let's say if the tag is not compliant. I think this is not the best approach to do it. I would rely more maybe on tag policies or maybe AWS config policies, but in config policies, you are in the same case because you need to specify the compliance resource types. So then you need to have a huge resource types. So in AWS, what I would do is to kind of limit maybe either use the tagging policies in general, or set tagging policies per resource type and go from there in combination with SCP. I don't know. That will be, but tagging policies are always easier. So that would be a better starting point, maybe. Also, you need to think that you can also control the tags from Terraform and these infrastructure as code tools. You can have some sort of tag unit testing in your infrastructure as code pipelines that check if the tags are right before the resources are created. So don't forget about that, okay?
Yes, next one is in Spanish. Basically, they know if, okay, we answer this one, we are going to share the content.
Yeah.
Yes. How important is use case for tagging policy? Should we have hard or soft enforcement?
Okay, I was saying that part of the tagging policy, it needs to be, we need to include in our tagging policy the use cases. Why? Because we need to think on what are we going to use the tags for? Okay, if, for example, we are using the tags to shut down virtual machines, we need to enforce this. Okay, it's clear. If we have one virtual machine that instead of dev, it's called development, it won't work if our tag check is to have dev, no? So I would say enforcement is key. For me, enforcement is key on non-optional tags. What I was saying, we need to define a set of mandatory tags and then a set of optional tags. Optional tags are nice to have. We don't need to enforce them. maybe we could enforce the format on them, but we don't need to enforce the presence of these tags. But on mandatory tags, for me, enforcement is key and it needs to be done. Otherwise, we cannot implement the use case. No, I think so.
Okay, would like to learn more about tagging enforcement types you have experience.
Okay, tagging enforcement types. I guess what you said is experiences with tagging enforcement, no, in general. Okay, tagging enforcement is difficult when there is already a tagging policy in place, because you need to make people do what they don't want to do. They need to be organized. They need to. So how to tackle this? For example, in Azure, you can use Azure policies with audit mode. This means that the policies won't deny you the creation of the resources, but there will be an alert and there will be a non-compliant red in this resource because someone has not put the right tags on it. You can use this, or you can even create this kind of compliant reports, and then you can make this part of your FinOps reports for everyone to see that these resources are not properly tagged. And I will tell you that if I am not doing things properly, others are doing, and these other people are looking at me like this is the one that is not doing the tags properly. Competition is a thing, so we should use that to our benefit. I would use that. Definitely put that for everyone to see. That's key, I would say.
Okay, next one, what are the essential tags you would choose in a company in its crawl stage?
Okay, yeah, crawl stage. For me, essential, environment, clear, environment is needed. Then you need to think also, for example, things like the region is not that interesting because usually the region is something that you can check on the cloud provider itself. I don't think we should put redundant information in the tags. We need to add information that's not there already, no? So for sure, environment would be my choice. Business unit, if your company is divided in business unit, it would be also my choice. Another one, interesting, source. Why? Source, for me, it's if the resource is created through Terraform or through infrastructure as code, I can mark the resource with that. And resources created outside of that, I can mark them with created from console or whatever, because there are always resources I cannot manage through Terraform. So this is an idea, I give it to you, but I would say for me, environment, business unit, project, maybe, application, maybe, depends on your use case.
Yeah.
This
On
is
that,
the starting point.
I think, yeah, it depends on also with your organizational structure. Like if you have a very good group and project setup that is handled through naming conventions, then you may be able to omit certain tagging and
Exactly.
you can enforce other, like you can use the tagging for other purposes. But then M for sure, like unless you have like a crazy naming convention, M is going to be there. And then the application, it's super difficult to identify. So unless you have a super good naming convention, which is also something that we talked about in the course, that all needs to be tagged.
Okay, next one, how to manage resources which are not taggable.
Okay, this is a good one. I can tell you two parts of it. There are resources that are not tagged because of the way they are created. What I mean with this is, for example, in Azure, there are some workloads that you can only deploy manually or from Bicep, from the portal, not through infrastructure as code. This is for me let's say, resources that we cannot tag in the proper way from the beginning. These resources are usually what I do is remediate by applying some sort of policy. For example, if, I don't know, a SQL managed instance is created manually in my company, I can have a policy that every time a SQL managed instance is created, it inherits the tags from the resource group. That's clear. This covers one part. What about the non-taggable things you were saying? Unfortunately, I can't tag what is not supported. So I don't know. We can work on this by the name, by using the naming convention. The naming convention is also our ally here. So if we have a dashboard that's reporting the different cost allocation and so on, maybe I can rely on the name on these non-taggable resources. That's an idea, but it's a challenge. Okay, so that's the best I can give you.
Okay, how do we standardize tags across providers? This theory and process of applicability is different from provider to provider, like Azure and GCP.
Yeah, this is the perfect example of what we do in the course. What we do in the course is go provider by provider, even covering Kubernetes and all of that, Google, Kubernetes, Azure, AWS, and we explain how to do it on each provider and what tools we have with examples and deep dive, like in a practical way, how we can do it in each provider. That's kind of the idea. So we need to know the tools that we have at our disposal in our FinOps toolbox in each provider. And we need to know, for example, that in Google, we have these labels as well, labels versus tags. We need to know that in AWS, we have the possibility to use these AWS generated tags for cost allocation, for example, or that in Azure, we have these JSON tags that we can use. All these specifics we need to know, and we need to know how they work to get the most out of it. And that's what we try to do in the course, I would say. It's not easy.
Right.
That's why the course is there. So
Requiring zero plus cost allocation mandatory tags, how to align with business objective.
Yeah, the examples, of course, they are part of the course. That's clear. We already covered that. How to align with business objectives. You need, first, I am in close contact with the head of IT, and I listen to his needs, and I try to meet his needs through tagging. So that's what I'm doing. Essentially, I am having meetings with him. I need to understand what he needs, and I need to develop my tagging strategy to adopt to his needs. Again, we are remembering that we are trying to bridge the gap between business and the technical side. As cloud practitioners and cloud engineers and architects, we always only think on the technical aspect, and this is a mistake. We need to think what gives value to our business. And for example, having the cost of each application and be able to assign the cost to the application owner, for example, through tagging, provides a lot of value and puts information to the table and gives us insights that no one else has shown before. And this is really valuable in my view. So yeah, that's kind of the idea. Can we have
abbreviation for GCP resources name?
The approach of the course is not to give you, this is the naming convention you need to use. No, that's not it. Because there is no perfect naming convention. There is a perfect naming convention for each organization. So what we do is to give you the guidelines to build your own and give you examples. In fact, one of the things I do is to show you the current naming convention I'm using in my company. As an example, the one that I designed and built. Okay, so you can imagine, but there is no perfect naming. We are not going to give you a naming convention that works on all clouds perfectly. No, you need to think on what are your needs, and you need to devise it yourself. That's the idea of the course. We give you the tools to do it, just that.
How about a few examples on tag enforcement?
Yeah, the same. We provide examples for all the tools we will cover in, like all the tools that we have been shown, SCP policies, AWS config policies, AWS tagging policies, GCP organizational policies, Azure policy, examples of a lot of Azure resource graph queries to query for different tags and to check tagging in general, to create dashboards, a lot of, for example, CLI commands in Google Cloud, G Cloud, AWS CLI, AZ CLI. We provide a lot of examples, so you have the basic tools, and then you can develop from there. Okay.
How you identify business application, which tag key is relevant for this? This is dynamic value, and risk for typo is big. What is the practice for tagging on resources with asset ID?
This is funny because, yeah, okay. For me, tags needs to be, we need to rely on infrastructure as code tools for tags. So for example, we can use a set of shared tags in infrastructure as code that we apply to all resources. And then we apply fine-grained tags using merges and things like that. That's what I do. I apply general and they apply fine-grained. How to avoid human error? It's easy. I need to rely on automation instead of manual application of tags. If I am doing manual application of tags, I am human, I will make mistakes for sure. So I prefer to rely on automation in general for that. Of course, if I have bad tags like this tag with an space in the beginning, these kind of things, or a tag with a space in the end, or a badly input tag, I need to have someone from time to time looking overall that the tags are consistent between each other. Otherwise, our cost reports won't be consistent as well. So this, I don't advise to do manually. I always rely on infrastructure as code, automation, whatever tool you have is best than do it manually, because you are going to fail. You are human, and we are all humans. So that's my approach.
Okay, this one I think you already answered, which is how do you deal with different providers like Azure and GCP to bring, we already answered. And
the different tools of each provider.
Great session. Okay, thank you.
We are so happy.
If we already said tagging in system environment, which are more complex, so where do we start and how to organize this kind of scenario?
Yeah, I was explaining this during the presentation. If you are in a complex environment where there is some tagging but is not widely adopted, for example, you could begin by proposing something that's not there already and that provides value. Okay, you can propose, once you gain the trust, then you can, after your first tag idea is successful and people are buying into the idea, then maybe you can suggest changes in the tagging policy. But for FinOps practitioners, and even for architects in general, I would say, trust is essential. We need to gain the trust of the engineering teams, of the different teams. They need to know that as FinOps practitioners, we care for them. We try to make things better. We are not trying to ruin everyone's days by telling them what to do, and you are not being optimal and these kind of ideas. No, we are trying to propose and do new things. So I would try this approach, proposing new things that are not there to gain the trust and to give FinOps kind of some drive and push. And then from there, try to propose new ideas and remediation of the bad practices, let's say.
How about tagging BQs, BQ datasets? How can we make sure whoever is writing BigQuery should include labels so that we can identify costs? Also, GCP does not have something like SCP as AWS, so how to enforce the policy in GCP?
In GCP, there is something similar to the AWS policies, and this is the organizational policies. In fact, this is something we cover in the course. For example, we cover tags with labels with fixed values. We cover tags as well, tag presence and tag values. We cover label length, label presence. We also cover some naming. We can enforce regex rules, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that's part of the course as well. So organizational policies can help us do this for sure. And about the first part of the question, what was it? Let me check. Oh yeah, the BigQuery datasets. Okay. Of course, I was saying during the session, if I don't have tags, they won't appear in my BigQuery exports. Okay, that's clear. I need to have the tags so they appear. I guess you are referring to BigQuery exports. Ah, no, you are referring to tagging BigQuery datasets. This is totally different. Yeah, this is a really specific. Yeah, I have not faced this exact topic, but what I would do is to set again the idea. I don't know about the enforcement because this is not covered in the course. BigQuery is really a specific thing. Data set in BigQuery, maybe organizational policies can be subject. Data sets here can be subject to that, but I would need to check. I will make this part of the course as well if I can. But the idea is the same without the enforcement. We need to identify what's there. We need to try to standardize, and we need to communicate what we want the different users of a service to do. And we need to also oversee. We need to have some kind of method to oversee, either G-Cloud CLI to oversee that the tags in our BigQuery datasets are right. We can rely on automation. We can send an email if the tags are not right from time to time for people to remind them to change the tags. All of this, rely on automation. Otherwise, you will be drowning in work for sure. Okay.
That's it. We have no more questions.
Okay.
I'd like to say that I would like to thank you, Alfonso, and you, Victor. I know that you've been working very hard on this. You also broke our record. I think we have 140 or
Yeah,
something
for
like that.
sure, for
125
sure.
different users.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
amazing, amazing. Thank you guys for attending. You asked a lot of questions. Amazing.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks everyone. There's the link for if someone is doubting, you just can save it for later. You have like, I don't know, 40 minutes, I think it is. You have 40 minutes to think. If not, we can talk about it later on. We will provide additional information later on and we can go through each by case. But other than that, it's been a pleasure. I think it was a great session. And I hope you have learned already and more to learn in the cohort course. We are super excited for this opportunity and for this idea to work. I think there is a need for that in the community, in the FinOps space, and we hope to provide 10x what you will expect. So we are working a lot for doing that. So thanks a lot. Thanks, Alfonso, again for giving the presentation and looking forward for this to start. Okay. So yeah,
Guys.
thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone. You reached the end of the course. Incredible. Almost 2 hours. Thank you so much for hearing us.
Thanks everyone. See you.
Bye.
You're the best.
Bye bye.